Soma is your classic nerd. No friends, no romance, just books, studies, and a brain that never stops working. But one day, everything changes. Out of nowhere, he's summoned into a mysterious kingdom by a desperate king who intends to use him as a sacrifice to save his nation. But Soma isn't the type to just roll over and accept death. Using his wits, he not only manages to survive but also outsmarts everyone in the room. Before long, this so-called hopeless nerd finds himself crowned as the new king, with a princess bride at his side and the looming responsibility of preventing an all-out war. So, how did it all happen? Let's rewind. Soma lived in modern Japan with his grandfather. He wasn't flashy or athletic, just a realistic, practical guy who spent most of his time in libraries. He dreamed of one day becoming a civil servant, but fate had other plans. One afternoon, while reaching for a book, a strange light appeared above him. Before he could react, the light engulfed him, pulling him into another world. In the blink of an eye, he was falling from the sky, terrified that he was about to die. But instead of splattering on the ground, he landed safely, cushioned by magic. As his dizziness faded, Soma realized he was surrounded by hooded figures staring intently at him. He was nervous, of course, but tried to put on a brave face, pretending he was in control. They escorted him to what looked like a grand courtroom filled with nobles, soldiers, and even beast people who seemed half human, half animal. Sitting on the throne was the king, who welcomed Soma as a summoned hero. But Soma wasn't impressed. He hadn't agreed to anything. He'd been yanked from his own world without permission, and he was angry. The king tried to calm him, explaining the situation. This world was filled with magic, witches, dwarves, elves, knights, and dragons. But a disaster had struck. In the northern part of the continent, a void had opened, unleashing endless hordes of demons. Kingdoms across the land had joined forces to fight them, but no matter how many demons they killed, more appeared. The war seemed unwinnable. And to make things worse, their own kingdom was being pressured by the strongest empire, the Chaos Empire. That empire demanded money, threatening to invade if they didn't pay. With no funds left, the king's ministers made a desperate decision: summon a hero from another world and hand him over to the Chaos Empire as a gift, hoping it would buy peace. Soma was speechless. They had dragged him here just to throw him away like an offering. When he asked what would happen to him in the Empire's hands, the ministers couldn't answer. Maybe he'd be killed. Maybe worse. They didn't know, and honestly, they didn't care. But Soma cared, and he quickly realized running away wasn't an option. If he tried, they'd hunt him down easily. Instead, he decided to think logically, to find a way to twist the situation in his favor. He questioned them further, asking about the last time a hero had been summoned. The minister admitted it had been 500 years ago, and no one had managed it since. Soma then pointed out something obvious. They couldn't just keep summoning heroes to hand over every time the Empire made demands. It wasn't a sustainable plan. The room went silent. For the first time, they realized how flawed their idea really was. Seeing his chance, Soma seized control of the conversation. He boldly declared that he was not just a summoned hero, but the hero who would lead their kingdom to survival. He promised to reform their finances, rebuild their strength, and make the nation self-sufficient again. The king and ministers were stunned, but his words carried weight. Desperate for hope, they agreed to let Soma take charge of the kingdom's finances. For 3 days and 3 nights, Soma worked tirelessly, studying the nation's accounts, debts, and resources. At the end of it, they gathered before a massive audience. Soma, utterly sleep-deprived, could barely stand. But the king shocked everyone with an announcement. From this day forward, Soma would be the new ruler of the kingdom. The crowd gasped. Even Soma himself was stunned. But before he could protest, the king added one more twist. Soma would also marry his daughter, Princess Lycia, to solidify his claim to the throne. In an instant, Soma's life was transformed. He went from a quiet library nerd to a king, husband-to-be, and the man responsible for saving an entire nation. Now burdened with endless paperwork and political decisions, Soma barely had time to breathe. One evening, while buried in documents, the door slammed open. A beautiful young woman in a military uniform stormed in, Lycia, the princess herself. But Soma was so exhausted that he didn't even look up. Instead, he casually asked her if she was literate and could help with paperwork. Lycia was stunned. This was her first meeting with her new fiancé, and he was treating her like an assistant. And that was only the beginning of Soma's strange new life as a king. Licia is a highly educated woman, and Soma quickly realizes it. Without even looking at any notes, she answers all his math questions correctly. Impressed, Soma asks her to help him with the mountain of paperwork on his desk. But Licia steps forward and formally introduces herself as the daughter of the former king. That finally makes Soma look up from his endless documents. He notices she's wearing a military uniform and asks her why. Licia explains that she always had a talent for combat and wanted to serve on the front lines, so she enrolled in the military herself. She then demands to know what Soma did to her father. There's no way, she says, that her father would just give up the throne so easily. Soma sighs deeply and tells her the truth. He never wanted to be here in the first place. He was summoned to this strange world and only wanted to avoid being handed over to the Chaos Empire. But her father was impressed by his ideas and made him king. Soma reassures Licia that he doesn't plan on keeping the crown forever. He just wants to stabilize the kingdom's finances over the next 2 or 3 years before returning home to his own world. As for their engagement, he tells her she's free to cancel it any time if she doesn't want to marry him. Licia is surprised by his humility and starts to see him in a new light. As they talk, Soma explains that he has already begun fixing the kingdom's economy. He's sold off useless jewels and treasure locked in the vault to buy food for the starving people. Licia protests, saying many of those treasures were ancient artifacts with immense historical value. But Soma calmly shows her a detailed list proving he only sold ordinary gold and silver jewelry, keeping national heritage items safe. Relieved, Licia asks about his future plans. Soma tells her he won't send money to the Chaos Empire right now. The people are hungry, and feeding them comes first. Licia agrees, and adds that instead of handing over money, they should strengthen their own military. Soma thinks carefully and realizes she's right. If they give money to the Empire, they'll only demand more. But if they invest in their own army, they might eventually stand tall and defend themselves. To better understand the country he's ruling, Soma takes an extensive tour of the kingdom. At first glance, it looks primitive and outdated, with no signs of modern tools or techniques. But on closer inspection, he discovers the nation is hiding modern luxuries in magical form. For example, in his world, electricity and light bulbs were groundbreaking inventions. But here, every street and house is illuminated. Not with wires or bulbs, but with magic lamps powered by the people's natural abilities. Magic in this world can create light, heat, and even water at will. Curious, Soma visits a priest who tells him to place his hand on a strange statue. If he has any affinity for magic, the statue will reveal it. The moment Soma touches it, his vision warps. Bright lights appear against a pitch-black backdrop, almost like a psychedelic dream. When he comes back to his senses, the priest confirms it. Soma does have magical talent, and he should train it. Back in his chambers, Soma experiments. He channels his consciousness into 3 pens, which immediately start writing and sorting paperwork on their own. When he tries with a 4th, it fails, so he learns his current limit is 3 objects at once. Licia visits him again and is stunned to see the magical pens working. She's never seen magic used this way. Soma explains that he invented it just now, then quickly hands her more paperwork. Together with his staff, they all work late into the night until exhaustion finally overtakes them. Soma looks up from his desk to see Licia asleep on the couch, her hair falling softly across her face. He gently brushes it aside, only for her to snap awake, suspicious. She demands to know what he was doing. Soma quickly explains he was just checking if she was asleep and nothing more. The next morning, Soma invites Licia out for a ride. She's surprised when he insists on sitting behind her, holding her waist tightly, because he has no idea how to steer a horse. Their ride takes them to a massive field blanketed in white. Soma points to the endless rows of cotton plants and explains the problem. Years ago, cotton was a valuable commodity, so farmers switched to growing it in massive quantities. But then other nations did the same, flooding the market and causing prices to crash. Now, cotton is nearly worthless. With no income from exports, the kingdom can't even afford to import food, leading to the famine ravaging their land. Licia feels guilty. As a leader of this country, she should have known about the situation. But Soma reassures her that blame is useless. They must work together to restore the nation to its former glory. Later, while they eat breakfast together, they are approached by a stern-looking man. He introduces himself as Ark, the captain of the Royal Guard, And with that, Soma's new life as king becomes even more complicated. Ark, the captain of the guards, respectfully asks if there's anything he can do to help. Soma, always blunt, replies that the kingdom doesn't have nearly enough skilled manpower. Most people don't know what they're doing. What he needs are specialists, talented individuals who can truly contribute. Ark bows, promising to see what he can arrange before taking his leave. Later, while drinking tea with Lycia, Soma suddenly gets an idea. He asks her if the kingdom has any sort of broadcasting device. At first, Lycia is confused. She doesn't understand what he means. But after he explains, she suddenly remembers. They do have a device used for public announcements. Soma's eyes light up. This is exactly what he needs. He explains to her that he's going to use the device to recruit skilled workers directly from the people. Lycia tells him they already have a recruitment system, which surprises Soma. She explains that candidates usually take a series of written examinations, and only those who pass are hired. Soma frowns and calls the system inefficient. With a literacy rate of only 30%, they're clearly missing out on talented people who simply can't read or write. Skills and aptitude matter far more than memorizing words on a page. He explains further, this system benefits only nobles and wealthy families, who can afford to educate their children and place them into positions of power. It's nothing but nepotism. Lycia is shocked but also intrigued, wondering what Soma intends to do. He simply tells her that she'll find out soon enough. The next day, Soma and Lycia stand in front of the broadcasting device. His voice reaches the entire kingdom as he makes a bold announcement. He offers everyone, no matter their wealth, class, or literacy, a chance to change their lives. Anyone with talent, special skills, or unique abilities is welcome to step forward. The only thing that matters is what they can do. The following day, the throne room is filled with anticipation. Only 5 individuals step forward for the king's open recruitment. Ark introduces them, and they bow. Except one. A tall, dark-skinned warrior elf named Aisha refuses to kneel, declaring that her clan bows only to those they have pledged their lives to. Ark demands she show respect, but Soma calmly stops him. Using his unique ability, Soma quickly gathers information on the warrior elves. They are famous for their unmatched combat skills and feared across the land. Aisha herself claims to be one of the strongest of her clan. Then, she surprises everyone by asking Soma for help. She explains that her homeland, the Blessed Forest, is dying at an alarming rate. Despite their best efforts to care for it, the forest continues to wither. Hearing of Soma's wisdom, she hopes he can find a solution. Soma thinks carefully and asks if they've been thinning the forest. Aisha doesn't understand, so he explains. When a forest grows unchecked, older trees block out sunlight, preventing new saplings from growing. Without younger trees to replace the old, the forest floor dies, leaving the entire ecosystem vulnerable to erosion and collapse. Shocked by his knowledge, Aisha drops to one knee and pledges her life to Soma. She swears to fight and die for him if he will help restore the forest. Soma accepts her loyalty, officially gaining a powerful new ally. Next comes a young woman named Juna. She is breathtakingly beautiful and, according to the ministers, the greatest singer in the kingdom. Descended from mermaids, her ancestors once lured sailors to their doom with their enchanting voices. Naturally, singing runs in her blood. Soma asks Juna to sing, reminding her that the performance will be broadcast across the kingdom. She agrees, but warns him that most of her songs are melancholic. Curious, Soma asks if she can memorize a song after hearing it once. Juna confidently says yes. Soma pulls out his phone, an object unknown in this world, and hands her an earbud to listen to a track. The entire court is astonished by the strange device. After listening, Juna nods, ready to perform. Then she begins to sing. Her voice fills the hall, resonating with raw beauty and emotion. When she finishes, thunderous applause echoes through the chamber. Soma praises her ability to learn and perform a song so perfectly after hearing it only once. The next candidate is unusual. A nervous, overweight man named Pancho stumbles forward, tripping over his own feet and nearly falling on his face. Embarrassed but determined, he explains his special ability. He is a glutton who has tasted nearly every dish in the kingdom. The court expects Soma to laugh, but instead, Soma's eyes widen. He leaps from his throne, rushes forward, and eagerly shakes Pancho's hand. At last, Soma has found someone he's been searching for all along. Soma warmly welcomes Pancho and tells him that in a time when the entire kingdom is suffering from famine, his unusual ability is far more valuable than anyone realizes. Pancho's eyes widen in surprise, and for the first time in his life, he feels truly needed. Tears roll down his cheeks as he explains that people have always mocked him, calling him a fatso. But Soma shakes his head, telling him that far from being useless, Pancho will be the one responsible for guiding the nation out of famine and back into prosperity. Encouraged, Pancho vows to do his best. The next candidate steps forward, a gloomy, serious-looking young man named Kaz. He tells Soma that while the king was busy judging the others, he had been silently judging him. Known as one of the greatest minds in the kingdom, Kaz is obsessed with reading every kind of literature he can find. His intelligence is obvious from the way he speaks. Soma asks him plainly, what does he think? Does he believe Soma is truly worthy of being king? Kaz answers coolly. To him, the entire judgment hinged on one decision: Soma's reaction to Pancho. If Soma had dismissed him as useless simply because he was overweight, then he would have proven himself to be an unfit king, blind to the kingdom's most urgent needs. But Soma's excitement at Pancho's abilities showed that he understood something deeper. That choice alone convinced Kaz that Soma had the wisdom to lead. Impressed, Kaz asks to serve as Soma's lieutenant and trusted advisor. Soma smiles, recognizing his sharp judgment, and immediately accepts him as his right-hand man. Then comes the final candidate. A timid wolf girl named Tomo slowly walks forward. Her voice trembles and she barely speaks above a whisper. Licia whispers that it's unusual to see members of the wolf clan inside the kingdom. They normally keep to themselves. Some even suggest she may be a refugee. Soma approaches her gently, kneeling down to her level. He asks softly what is wrong. After a long pause, Tomo leans in and whispers something into his ear. Whatever she says makes Soma's eyes widen in shock, but he quickly hides his reaction, standing up and dismissing the gathering before anyone notices. Later, in his chambers, Soma gathers Licia, Ark, the minister, and Tomo. He asks if anyone else had heard what she whispered earlier, but they all shake their heads. It had been too quiet. Soma sighs in relief, then warns them that what he is about to reveal must remain an absolute secret. He explains that Tomo can not only speak to animals, but also to demons. Everyone in the room freezes. Licia immediately protests, insisting that it's impossible. The demon language is entirely different from any spoken tongue, and no one in human history has ever been able to understand it. Yet, Tomo claims otherwise. She explains that one day, while wandering in the forest, she heard strange noises and discovered a demon. Short in stature, with the head of a dog, terrified, she screamed for help. To her surprise, the demon told her to be quiet in his own language. And she understood him. Shocked, she replied, and the demon realized she could comprehend his words. Before she could ask more, other demons approached and he urged her to run before the others killed her. That was the last time she saw him. Licia is shaken, asking Soma if he intends to try negotiating with the demons. She insists it's impossible. They've killed countless humans. But Soma calmly replies that humans have killed countless demons as well. Perhaps, he suggests, this entire war is built on a misunderstanding, born from the inability of both sides to understand each other. The room falls silent. Finally, Soma declares that Tomo is perhaps the most important person in the entire kingdom, more important even than himself. He orders Ark to provide her with the highest level of protection. The minister, however, warns that such special treatment will draw unwanted attention. To solve this, he suggests adopting Tomo into the royal family. Soma considers it. But since he is not yet married, he suggests that Licia's father take Tomo in as his ward, granting her royal protection without suspicion. At first, Tomo protests, saying she already has a family living in the refugee camp. But Soma reassures her. If she is adopted, her parents will also be brought into the castle as royal relatives. Overjoyed, Tomo agrees, finally smiling with relief. Not long after, Pancho returns from his first mission, proudly thanking Soma for letting him borrow the royal wyvern, which made his journey quick and safe. He then presents his latest discovery, a bizarre, gelatinous monster, a slime. Everyone recoils in disgust, horrified at the thought of eating it. But Pancho, undeterred, dons an apron and begins cooking. He slices the slime into noodle-like strips, boils them with salt, vegetables, and stock. To the others, it looks revolting. but to Soma it looks oddly familiar. He sits down, takes a bite, and his face lights up with surprise. To his astonishment, it tastes just like ramen from his own world. Soma takes the first bite of Pancho's strange creation, slurping it down noisily. To everyone's surprise, he enjoys it. Slowly, the others gather their courage and try it as well. Soon, even Licia and the others are happily eating. Against all odds, the slime noodle dish is a success. The broadcast of this food experiment reaches the people, and the results are immediate. Taverns and eateries all across the capital begin recreating the meals Soma and Pancho showcased. Before long, chefs start experimenting, combining flavors and creating brand new dishes. For the first time in years, the citizens begin to feel hope rising with every meal. But Soma barely has time to enjoy the success. A guard rushes in, summoning him urgently to the throne room. There, he finds Kaz standing beside the Prime Minister, both bowing deeply before him. Soma tells them to rise and speak their minds. The Prime Minister, with a grave expression, announces that it is time for him to resign. He explains that the kingdom needs fresh leadership, someone with new techniques and new ideas to deal with the crises at hand. Following the old ways, he admits, will no longer be enough. Soma is shocked. He asks who could possibly succeed such a brilliant and experienced leader. But the Prime Minister has already decided. His apprentice, Kaz, is ready to take the mantle. Though young, Kaz has proven sharp, wise, and capable. Soma studies Kaz carefully, then nods. He accepts the resignation and appoints Kaz as the new Prime Minister. Kaz bows and thanks him for the honor, but then immediately scolds the king. He points out that Soma has been overworking himself non-stop and warns that if he continues at this pace, he'll burn out, not just harming himself, but also the productivity of those around him. Reluctantly, Soma agrees to take a rare day off. Licia is stunned when he asks her on a proper date, with Aisha as their discreet bodyguard. Licia worries about appearances, but Soma insists he just wants to spend a quiet evening together. To avoid attention, Licia brings him a school uniform, and together they disguise themselves before heading into the city. The couple eventually stops at Juna's cafe, slipping into a booth to enjoy tea and snacks. But their peaceful moment is interrupted by a loud argument from the next table. A fox girl named Kaide and a fiery, red-haired young man named Hal are bickering so loudly that Soma can't help but overhear. Hal angrily declares that he doesn't trust the new king. In his eyes, Soma is too young, too inexperienced, and unfit to rule. He talks about joining Duke Carmine's army, openly rebelling against the crown. Kaide, horrified, urges him not to even say such things. She argues that Soma has already proven himself as an intelligent and capable ruler, doing more for the kingdom than anyone expected. But Hal, driven by youthful arrogance, craves war so he can prove himself on the battlefield. Soma finally stands, walking over to their table. Calmly, he asks Hal why he hates the king so much. Hal sneers, demanding to know who Soma even is. But Kaide suddenly realizes the truth. This isn't just any man. It's the king himself. Flustered, she tries to calm Hal down, but he continues to mouth off until Aisha swiftly twists his arm and slams him down with ease. Soma gently tells her to let him go. Looking Hal in the eye, Soma explains that he will not force anyone to follow him. If Hal truly wants to join Duke Carmine, he is free to do so. But then, Soma delivers the words that strike directly into Hal's heart. If Hal joins the rebellion, he will eventually face Katie on the battlefield. And if she is wounded, he will not be allowed to save her. Protecting her would be considered treason. In that moment, Hal would be powerless to help the person he cares for most. The weight of Soma's words sinks in. Hal falls silent, realizing the truth. Finally, he admits that he cannot bear the thought of fighting against Soma, or against Kaide. Soma smiles softly, thanks him for his honesty, and takes his leave. The next day, while sipping tea with Licia, Soma demonstrates his growing mastery of dark magic, now able to control multiple objects at once. But before they can enjoy their quiet time, news arrives. The head of the prestigious Magna family has come to the palace with urgent business. In the throne room, Soma finds Glaive Magna, accompanied by Hal and Kaide. Hal is covered in bruises, clearly punished. Glaive bows deeply, apologizing for his son's reckless words and promising the unwavering loyalty of the Magna family to the crown. He assures Soma that Hal has already been disciplined and begs him not to take further action. Soma accepts the apology. To show his trust, he announces that Kaidi will be welcomed into the royal guard as one of his mages, while Hao, despite his arrogance, will be given the chance to serve as an officer. Both siblings bow in gratitude, their loyalty to Soma now sealed. The paperwork is finally finished. Thanks to Soma's dark magic, the last few files practically file themselves. A miracle after weeks of grinding labor. He calls everyone who slogged through those endless ledgers into the great hall and stands before them. "You are the real treasure of this kingdom," he tells them, voice calm but full of gratitude. "Because of your work, I can move on to the next project, the plan that will secure our survival." He explains the strategy plainly: build trade, lower food prices, and create long-term supply routes so no one starves again. He cannot pay them extra. The treasury is still hollow. So he offers what he can: a week off and a bottle from the royal wine cellar, the finest vintages reserved for the court. It's a small thing, but the men cheer and rush off, relieved and humored by the king who remembers their faces. Liz watches him, worried. "Is it prudent to give them a week?" she asks. "There's more to do." Soma only smiles and outlines his next move: a port. Not just any port. A controlled, taxed harbor that turns a once sleepy fishing village into a trading hub. Ships that bring food will pay low fees. Foreign merchants who abuse the system will pay more. Trade becomes regulated, supply chains form, and roads connect inland farms to market. Build the infrastructure, and the shortage becomes a problem of supply, not scarcity. The next morning, Soma, Liz, and Aisha head to the chosen village. Ark is already there, tents pitched, logistics humming. But the elders are united in their refusal. "Don't build the port. The water gods will punish us." An old legend looms over the shoreline. A sea monster, the story says, appears before divine wrath. The earth trembles with its approach and the creature swallows everything. Soma listens with patience. He asks the elders for specifics. When did this happen? How did they know? The old man answers with the cadence of generations. "My father felt the ground shake before the sea took our coast." The fear is real. The legend is real to them. Back at the castle, Soma calls Kaz and Ark into his chamber. "Do you believe in sea gods?" Kaz asks bluntly. Soma shakes his head. He does not believe in monsters under the waves, but he believes in truth behind legends. Myths carry warnings, he says. When the earth shakes and the sea rises, it is probably a tsunami. The villagers have seen the signs of earthquakes and floods for generations and labeled them as monsters. Soma decides to respect the warning. They will not build the port in that disaster-prone stretch. Instead, mark the cursed zone and find higher ground. Construction begins in earnest, and Hal is among those hauling stone and timber. He complains the military should not be doing roads, but Katie cuts him off. The kingdom needs manpower, and these roads will let food move faster than ever. At lunch, Hal tries a burger made from fresh vegetables carried over a newly completed road. It's the first time in weeks he tastes food that didn't come from a storage barrel, and he's stunned. The roads are already working. As they walk the newly laid path, Soma explains the small engineering touches: street lamps lit by luminescent moss, warding trees planted to keep wild animals away while soil and seedlings re-establish. Nature and craft, side by side. Then a messenger bird arrives with grim news for Aisha. A landslide has swallowed half of her home village. The message is a single line, but it thunders through her composure. She stares at the paper, hands shaking. Soma steps forward, steady and practical. "There's no time to weep. People need rescuing." "Take your unit," he tells Aisha. "You lead the first response. Bring those you can. I'll send help." He doesn't waste words on speeches. His calm directs the next steps. Ark mobilizes teams, supply carts are readied, and Aisha steels herself. Soma gives a brief, steadying hand on her shoulder. Comfort that is both promise and command. They move out, not as the distant faces of some untouchable court, but as the kingdom's answer to a desperate call. Roads, ports, and policy matter. but so does the human will that holds a rope while others climb. In a world of legends, Soma chooses both reason and mercy. Build smarter, and run toward those who need you when the ground gives way. Finally, Soma tells Liz to hurry back to the palace, mobilize another rescue team, and order Hakia to send relief packages to the Dark Elves. He then asks Aisha how long it will take to reach her village. Aisha explains that under a normal military march, the journey would take 2 full days. Hearing this, Soma grows deeply worried. If 3 days pass between the disaster and the rescue team's arrival, the death toll will increase drastically. Just then, one of their reunions passes by, giving Soma an idea. He decides to use these creatures to transport the rescue team quickly to Aisha's village, while he himself follows with the royal carriage. By evening, they finally arrive. Aisha's father greets Soma, hailing him as the king, and introduces himself as Woden. But Soma quickly tells him to skip the formalities and explain the current situation. Woden reveals that the landslide claimed 100 lives, and 40 more people are still missing. Soma instructs him to compile a list of the missing, promising that each name will be struck off once the person is found. He also orders scouts to monitor the mountain for any signs of another landslide. As the rescue mission begins, Aisha volunteers to serve as a guide. Woden agrees, since she knows the forest like the back of her hand. Soma then addresses the search and rescue team, motivating them to put their road construction skills to use. They would need to excavate the land thoroughly to find the missing. While digging, Soma suddenly stops and runs toward a fallen tree trunk, claiming he can hear voices beneath it. Hal is confused since he hears nothing, but when he digs, he discovers a buried human hand. Shocked, Hal pulls the trunk aside and rescues the trapped survivor. Amazed, Hal asks how Soma knew someone was there. Soma reveals a small wooden mouse he had crafted. Using his magic, he can share part of his consciousness with these mice, allowing them to slip into spaces too small for humans. The same method he once used with pens and dummies now helps him guide the rescue. Eventually, the search concludes. Every villager is accounted for. Woden thanks Soma for his intervention, though many lives were still lost. At that moment, one of Woden's daughters announces that the princess has arrived with the second rescue team. But a grieving man cries out that it is already too late. Soma explains that even if they arrived late, their efforts are not wasted. Tending the wounded and rebuilding the village are just as vital. The man, however, insists that nothing can bring back the dead. Woden quickly silences him, revealing that the man is his younger brother Rob, who lost his wife in the disaster and now has a daughter in critical condition. Rob breaks down, lamenting that despite his devotion to protecting the forest, it had taken his wife's life. Woden comforts him, urging him to mourn without casting blame. Later, Aisha tells Soma that Rob had opposed the thinning of the forest trees, wondering if that decision contributed to the landslide. Soma assures her it was simply misfortune, worsened by heavy rainfall. On the way back to the palace, Liz apologizes for being of little help. Soma admits that he feels even more useless. He should have planned better for disasters like this. He regrets being so focused on solving the food shortage that he neglected other critical issues. Days later, Juna visits Soma and finds him buried in paperwork. She mentions that Liz is worried about his poor sleeping habits. Soma admits his mind has been restless. Juna sits beside him, gently lays her hand on his forehead, and comforts him, telling him it's fine to lean on her when he feels exhausted. Before she finishes, Soma is already fast asleep. Smiling softly, Juna sings to him as he rests. Meanwhile, conflict brews elsewhere. In the dukedom, Duke Carmine, a lion-headed man, insists that Soma is unfit to rule and must be overthrown. Duchess Excel is shocked, reminding him how much Soma has already done for the kingdom. But Carmine argues that Soma neglects crucial affairs and dismissed loyal officials. Under the guise of combating corruption, Carmine doesn't want the throne. Himself, he simply wishes for the former king to be reinstated out of loyalty. Another Duke, Castor, supports rebellion, even clamoring for war before Soma secures the loyalty of the people. Excel warns them that neighboring kingdoms, like Amadonia, might exploit their rebellion to attack Elfrieden. But Castor reveals that Amadonia has already promised reinforcements against Soma. Excel suspects deception, believing Amadonia has likely made the same offer to Soma in order to sow confusion. Suddenly, Castor's daughter Carla bursts into the room, declaring that if her father fights Soma, she will stand by him no matter the cost. Far away, Gaius, the cunning ruler of Amadonia, is delighted by Carmine's decision to rebel. He mocks the Duke as a foolish old man, gleefully plotting to send reinforcements to both sides, Carmine and Soma alike, just as Excel predicted. His son, Prince Julius, supports the scheme, but his daughter, Princess Roroa, is disheartened. She envies how Elfrieden continues to prosper, unlike her homeland. Back at the palace, Soma consults Hakia about resorting to violence to protect the kingdom. Though reluctant to embrace cruel measures, Soma recalls his grandfather's dying words, that a ruler must protect those he considers his own, even at great cost. With that resolve, Soma prepares to face the trials ahead. With a decisive tone, Soma orders his council to begin their campaign of subjugation. Meanwhile, on the other side, Gaius rallies his army preparing to invade the Elven lands, specifically the grain-rich city of Altamura. Believing that Soma is busy fighting against the dukes, Gaius proclaims that it is finally time to reclaim the lands stolen from their ancestors 50 years ago. But just as his speech reaches its peak, Minister Colbert rushes in and begs him to reconsider. He warns that plunging the kingdom into war will only lead to famine and starvation. Gaius, enraged by the interruption, hobbles forward and viciously kicks the minister in the face. Even then, Colbert reminds him of the treaty they signed under the Mankind Act. Yet neither Gaius nor his son will listen. They dismiss him outright. Beaten and bruised, Colbert stumbles out of the hall looking like he had just stepped out of a brutal fight. On his way, he crosses paths with Gaius's daughter. She quietly confides in him that she intends to flee the kingdom, warning him to prepare for chaos. While Gaius pushes forward with war, Soma is already planning his moves. He calls for Lycia, asking her for a special favor. Through a magical projection, he holds a meeting with the three dukes. After the introductions, Soma lays down his ultimatum. If they continue to rebel against him, he will be forced to brand them as traitors. Lady Excel is the first to question him, asking about his true intentions toward the duchies. Soma calmly explains that he doesn't seek to harm them individually. His only goal is to unite their armies under one banner to strengthen the kingdom. But Castor immediately resists, fearing that such centralization would only breed corruption. Soma counters firmly. By combining their forces, they will stand a better chance against foreign threats like the kingdom of Amadonia. And if corruption ever does spread under his rule, Soma gives his word. They may take his head as punishment. Moved by his conviction, Lady Excel pledges her allegiance, vowing that her entire army will fight under Soma's banner. But Castor and Duke Carmine remain unmoved, arguing that the previous king had no right to hand over the throne without their consent. Castor declares neutrality, while Carmine insists on standing against Soma to uphold his pride as a warrior. At last, Soma requests a final condition, that if any side is defeated, their surviving soldiers must pledge loyalty to the victor. The dukes agree. To prove her determination, Lycia cuts her hair before them, swearing to fight by Soma's side. Juna steps in as well, reminding Soma that Excel's support was thanks to her efforts. Encouraged, Soma thanks them both, while Lycia reassures him that he has the full support of their allies. The day of battle finally arrives. Gaius rallies his troops, shouting a battle cry as his army launches a surprise invasion of Elfrieden. At Altamura, he demands the gates be opened, but the city's defenders are divided. Some loyal to Gaius, others ready to kill him. Julius advises his father to trick the gatekeeper, promising safety in exchange for passage, though Gaius secretly plans to kill the man once the gates open. Back in Elfrieden, Soma has already prepared a fortress at the kingdom's entrance, built with the help of Ku's earth magic and countless workers. When the enemy begins their assault, arrows and siege weapons prove useless. They switch to heavy cannons, blasting dents into the fortress walls. Hal urges Ku to block the strikes, but she's exhausted from constructing the defenses. Just when hope seems lost, a dark elf named Sir steps forward. With a single arrow, he shatters an incoming cannonball. Grateful for Hal's rescue of his daughter during a past landslide, Sir pledges his aid, though his daughter's admiration of Hal clearly irritates him. Under Ark's command, the royal army charges directly at the cannons, ignoring the enemy soldiers. The strategy works, destroying the enemy's firepower. But when Duke Carmine receives word, he remains calm. With 40,000 soldiers against Soma's 10,000, he prepares to lure Soma into his army's grasp, setting the stage for his grand strategy. Meanwhile, Gaius believes victory is within reach. His son Julius orders their soldiers to prepare for conquest, but their confidence crumbles when Lord Weiss returns in terror, admitting he failed to control the divided Forbidden Army. Weiss pleads for more time, offering Gaius gold in exchange for patience. Julius convinces his father to wait until the next day. Unbeknownst to Gaius, Weiss is secretly working with Lady Excel, using the gold to buy time for Soma's forces to prepare. But if Soma doesn't arrive by noon, Excel admits, they're as good as dead. That evening, Lycia rests her head on Hal's shoulder during a quiet dinner. With shy determination, she tells him that if they can survive this war together, they can endure anything. She asks him to guard her like a fragile egg, to keep her safe until the end. By the next morning, Carmine's army pushes harder, adopting a new formation. But this only plays into the Forbidden Army's advantage, giving them opportunities for direct combat. On the other side, Gaius prepares to honor his deal with Weiss, unaware of the trap closing in around him. On the battlefield, a sudden wave of wyverns descends toward the fortress. At first, Hal assumes they must be reinforcements for Carmine's army, but the truth lies in events from the night before. In the Red City, Duke Castor's right-hand man reported that the citizens had been evacuated, and neighboring air forces sought to ally with him. But Castor refused their help. He had no intention of sharing the glory of rebellion. Still, doubts gnawed at him. Though it was too late to change sides, he admitted to himself that Soma might have a hidden move waiting, given how carefully the young king concealed his whereabouts. Their discussion was interrupted when Carla burst in with urgent news. Soma's forces had been sighted, but strangely, there was only one ship. Moments later, Soma himself requested a magical projection call with Castor. As the ship approached the castle, it unleashed a barrage of cannon fire, shocking the Duke with its ingenuity. Soma offered Castor one last chance to join the winning side, but Castor scoffed. He would never surrender his pride so easily. As the ship bombarded the castle, Castor ordered Carla to silence the cannons. She and the Air Force swept in swiftly, forming a tight formation around Soma's vessel. They struck hard, aiming for its wheels to disable it, though Carla carefully avoided striking anywhere that might endanger Princess Lycia, just in case she was on board. At last, the cannons went silent. But when Castor's forces stormed the ship, they discovered no soldiers, only puppet hands operating the weapons. It was a trap. The ship had been nothing more than a decoy, a distraction while Soma infiltrated the Red City. Inside the castle, Soma confronted Castor directly. The young king revealed that he had studied the city's blueprints and used hidden passageways to bypass the defenses. Castor, though impressed, remained unyielding. He even entrusted his loyal retainer Talman with command of the Air Force, should he fall. Soma gave him one final chance to surrender, but Castor drew his blade, declaring that real men don't back down. At once, Aisha stepped forward, sword in hand, challenging the Duke. Castor mocked her as a mere child, but she laughed, reminding him she had lived for decades. With overwhelming strength, she slammed him into a wall, forcing him to acknowledge her power. What kind of man, Castor thought, earns such loyalty? Before he could recover, Lycia herself appeared, unleashing a surprise attack. With her magic, she encased Castor in ice, and Aisha's sword strike sent him crashing to the ground. Defeated but unbroken, Castor admitted he had fought with honor. He asked Lycia if Soma was truly a worthy king. With conviction, she answered yes, even to the point of opposing her own father for him. As their battleship exploded outside, Lycia bound Castor with a slave collar. Its magic ensured that if he attempted any harm against Soma, it would tighten and take his life. Carla arrived moments later, horrified to see her father shackled as a slave. She drew her sword in rage, but Lycia warned her any reckless action would kill Castor instantly. Soma, keeping his word, appointed Talman as temporary commander of the Air Force under the Forbidden Army's orders. Talman accepted without hesitation, though he worried about the fate of the Duke and his daughter. Soma assured him their case would be judged after the war. For now, he was to rally the Air Force and announce their new allegiance. On their way back, Lycia spoke kindly of Carla, calling her devoted and even teasing that she might hide an appealing figure beneath her armor. Soma quickly caught her meaning. Lycia wanted him to spare Carla's life and perhaps take her as a concubine. But Soma hesitated. Overlooking rebellion could cost him the people's trust. Surprisingly, Carla herself refused Lycia's plea, reminding them that Soma had sent countless letters urging them to reconsider, which they had rejected. Back at Elfrieden's fortress, Hal and Katie spotted the Air Force approaching. At once, Katie realized Soma must have defeated Castor. Talman proved her right, ordering the Wyvern Riders to strike Carmine's castle while sparing the civilians below. Hal and Katie congratulated each other on the success of their plan, even if it hadn't been easy. Carla, watching from nearby, was shocked by how casually Hal spoke to the king. Lycia smiled, explaining that Soma welcomed such informality. Meanwhile, in Carmine's camp, his generals panicked. The Air Force had turned against them, and with Soma now controlling the skies, their situation was dire. Carmine saw the truth his cause was lost. But his generals thought differently. They suggested using the innocent townsfolk as human shields while they hid in the castle. Disgusted, Carmine finally saw the rot within the men he had once protected. Without hesitation, he ordered slave collars to be placed on their necks, forcing them to beg Soma for mercy. Gaius was forced to bow his head and announce total surrender to Soma. Word quickly reached Soma's camp that a peace flag had been raised in Randell, leaving his loyal followers stunned that the war was over so suddenly. Meanwhile, old man Carmine sat alone, clutching an expensive bottle of wine gifted to him by King Albert. He had always planned to drink it in celebration of Lycia's wedding and treasured it above all else. But now, with defeat looming, he feared he might be captured before ever seeing that day. His grim reflection was broken when Beowulf burst in with surprising news. Soma wasn't invading the city at all. Instead, he had marched away, taking Carmine's army with him to a distant battlefield. Overjoyed, Carmine lifted his bottle high, honoring both Soma and Lycia. Carla, however, was confused and demanded answers. Soma and Lycia explained that everything had been part of Duke Carmine's plan. Though Soma never intended to fight the Dukes, the only one who openly sided with him from the start was Duchess Excel, thanks to her granddaughter's bond with Soma. But Carmine, despite his outward opposition, had been secretly planning to expose the corruption festering within his army. His sacrifice ensured stability for the kingdom. Soma apologized to Carla for keeping her father in the dark. If the truth had leaked, Carmine's sacrifice would have been meaningless. Hearing this, Carla accepted it, understanding the weight of the decision once she realized how much Carmine had risked for their future. Back at Altamura, Gaius and his reckless son schemed to punish Lord Weist for his hesitation. But their plans unraveled when the Duchess herself appeared atop the city walls. Realizing she had been in contact with Soma all along, Gaius's son urged his father to retreat immediately. Before they could act, Excel opened a magical portal that broadcast Soma's declaration to the entire realm. The civil war was over. Soma now commanded every army. Worse still, he publicly exposed Gaius for exploiting the conflict to seize Altamura. Augustus, seizing the moment, declared war on Gaius, warning that Soma's forbidden army was already marching toward Amadonia's capital, Van, to burn it to the ground. News quickly reached Amadonia's princess. Her father's forces had been ambushed on their return and half their numbers wiped out. Though Gaius and Julius rallied reinforcements from nearby villages, they arrived too late. Elfriden's flags already flew proudly over the capital. Dismayed, Gaius assumed all of Van had fallen, but Julius noticed the castle itself still lacked enemy banners. Rallying his men, he ordered an assault. The battlefield erupted. Both sides clashed with brutal force. Kazuya's allies turned the tide. Kiku trapped enemy soldiers in earthen barricades, while Hal hurled fiery spears into their ranks. Even amid victory, Soma looked uneasy. Carla asked what troubled him, and he confessed that if the fighting grew too bloody, he might have to beg for mercy to spare his men. He hated bloodshed, yet realized he was slowly becoming more like a true king. On that battlefield, he decided to stop thinking like a temporary ruler and accept the full weight of the throne. Meanwhile, Gaius saw the truth. He had doomed his exhausted soldiers. Knowing the battle was lost, he ordered Julius to flee. Though reluctant to abandon his father, Julius escaped with a small unit, leaving Gaius to face his fate. With a band of elite warriors, Gaius charged straight at Soma. Sensing danger, Soma gave Carla a painful order. If he fell, the slave collar would transfer to Lycia, making her the next ruler. Carla refused such nonsense, insisting she could kill Gaius herself if ordered. The clash was fierce. Carla and Gaius locked in a deadlock, both equally strong. Suddenly, Soma's puppet struck Gaius, drawing a laugh from the old general who mocked the idea of being defeated by a toy. But Soma pressed the advantage, commanding Carla to ignite the puppet. The explosion engulfed Gaius in flames. Carla begged Soma to retreat, furious he was risking his life. But to their horror, Gaius staggered out of the fire, still advancing. Arrows pierced his body, yet he refused to fall. With his last strength, he hurled his sword at Soma. The blade struck the ground inches from Soma's feet. At last, the mighty general collapsed, dead. Soma, moved by his valor, declared that Gaius's name should be written into history. Far away, Princess Roroa received the news of her father's death. Alone, she shed tears, not just for his passing, but for the foolish man who had sacrificed everything in vain. The following day, Lycia learned the full truth. Soma had been planning Amadonia's takeover all along, carefully minimizing casualties. He explained that Hakuya advised against evacuating border villages. Doing so would reveal his plans. Instead, Soma staged a fake attack with fiery monsters, scaring the villagers into fleeing without bloodshed. The plan worked perfectly. Without issuing a formal evacuation order, Soma forced the villagers to leave the area safely. Soon after, Ark reported that Princess Rora had fled the city alongside the finance minister and several officials. Julius, meanwhile, had retreated west with a handful of soldiers. Concerned about stability, Soma instructed that some bureaucrats be lured back, since they were essential for Amadonia's future development. Pancho then delivered troubling news. The Amadonian treasury was almost empty of food supplies, yet overflowing with weapons. Soma quickly decided to sell the weapons and impose strict food rationing across the kingdom until trade normalized. If that still wasn't enough, they would have to urgently import food from Elfrieden. Another official reported that the Amadonian soldiers were in surprisingly good spirits, which could have helped Soma's conquest of other cities. But Soma refused to expand further. He explained that he wasn't ready to provoke unnecessary trouble with the Empire. After all, he had already breached the Mankind Treaty, a pact created to unite humanity against the Demon Kingdom, by seizing Van through military force. Since Amadonia was a treaty signatory, Soma knew the Empire might take extreme measures to reclaim it. Liz then asked why Soma hadn't signed the treaty beforehand, knowing the risks. Soma revealed the truth. The declaration carried a hidden clause, one that could eventually fracture the Empire itself. With tensions still high after the war, Ark wondered whether Soma had a plan to ease public anger. Right on cue, Soma summoned Juna, stunning everyone with her elegant navy uniform. He explained that she was part of his next initiative, Project Lorelei. Not long after, a new broadcast aired across the kingdom. A cheerful announcer promised daily updates on events in Elfrieden and its neighboring lands. It became clear, Soma wasn't just ruling, he was shaping culture itself. The entertainment continued when Aisha appeared in a stunning dress, clearly flustered by the attention. Citizens of Amadonia were shocked to learn that such a young man, Soma, was the mastermind leading them. He then revealed Elfrieden's first live musical show. The audience was enchanted as a young girl performed on stage. Afterward, Juna stepped forward, delivering a mesmerizing performance that lifted the people's spirits. During her song, Soma quietly told Aisha that a special guest would perform next and asked her to watch his back. Ever loyal, Aisha thumped her chest, vowing to guard him with her life. The surprise guest turned out to be none other than Lieutenant General Margarita of Amadonia. When she began singing Amadonia's national anthem, the crowd froze in shock. But soon, silence gave way to respect, as the audience rose to pledge loyalty. After the performance, Margarita offered Soma her life, believing she had just committed treason. But Soma surprised her, calmly saying he had no reason to execute her. She couldn't believe it. After all, the anthem was a song about reclaiming land from Elfrieden. But Soma declared that his kingdom had no such petty laws. A good nation, he explained, was one where its people could sing freely without fear. Meanwhile, Soma's prediction was coming true. The Grand Chaos Empire, leader of the Mankind Treaty, was preparing to intervene. At its head was the beautiful and kind Maria, revered as the saint of the empire. Her sister Jean warned her that they needed to negotiate with Soma directly to reclaim Van, if only to preserve the empire's honor. Back in Van, Soma was buried under endless paperwork. The conquest had given him enormous responsibilities, but the silver lining was the resilience of the people. For the first time in years, the citizens of Van felt free, motivated to rebuild their lives. Princess Roroa, however, saw it differently. Ever since her father's downfall, the people no longer looked to her family for leadership, and she knew her brother had no chance to reclaim the throne. Still, she vowed that Soma would pay for what he had done to her family in the capital. As Soma worked, Pancho presented him with an unusual discovery, a lily plant. Its roots were valuable food, but its leaves had hallucinatory properties. To harvest them, people used orangutans, creatures addicted to the plant's effects. Soma asked if Amadonia had any, and Pancho revealed he had already arranged a deal with them, barrels of weed in exchange for their labor. With everything set, Pancho prepared a hearty stew from the lily roots and distributed it to the people, offering them hope along with a meal. Later, Soma ventured into the marketplace with Luna and his adopted younger sister, Tomoe. Disguised by a simple hat, he stayed out of the spotlight. When Tomo darted off to shop, Luna clung to his arm, assuring him that he was safe under her watch. She suggested they buy gifts for Tomo, and soon enough the girl was happily picking out dresses. Soma, however, chose a rather ugly pair of shoes, prompting Luna to step in. With a knowing smile, she explained, through a clever military analogy, that women bargain differently. Soma took the hint and let her handle the shopping. In the end, Tomo left with more clothes than she could carry, overjoyed at her brother's generosity, even if the shoes were questionable. As for Luna, Soma gifted her a ladybug hairpin, a small gesture that left her quietly touched. Flustered, Luna thanks Soma, but then playfully tells him he should also buy presents for Liz and the others. Soma smiles and reassures her. He's already gotten something for everyone. He also tells Luna to drop the formalities and just call him by his name. She leans in with a teasing smile and calls him a naughty flirt. They stop by a food stall to grab a quick bite, and little Tobo ends up falling asleep right on Soma's lap. A moment later, a newscaster announces sunny weather across Elfrieden and Van. Perfect laundry weather. Suddenly, a woman's voice interrupts, praising how creatively the gemstone broadcast is being used. When they turn, they see none other than Jean Euphoria, commander of the Empire's military. Seeing her casually walk into his territory, Soma warns that she must have a lot of audacity. Luna instantly steps forward to shield him, but Jean assures them she means no harm. She only came to confirm whether the rumors about Soma were true. She explains that she heard of a wise ruler who revived a bankrupt kingdom, solved a food crisis with creative meals, and stabilized the nation. But at the same time, she also heard rumors that he's a shameless womanizer, engaged to the former king's daughter yet still gathering the kingdom's most beautiful women to build a harem. Luna chuckles. She's heard the same rumors. Soma, however, is left speechless by the reputation he apparently carries. Jean then reveals her plan. She intended to send her sister Maria, the so-called Saint of the Empire, to plead with Soma for the release of Emadonia, believing he was weak to beautiful women. Soma is shocked she'd use her own sister like that. But Jean clarifies. Maria dislikes being called a saint, and in truth, she's far from holy. Still, Maria doesn't mind using the title if it helps achieve her goals. Hearing this, Luna jokingly calls herself the Songstress and asks Soma what he thinks of her silly new title. Jean laughs and admits Soma is an amusing king, one who clearly has a close bond with his officials. To her, it's proof that his kingdom is stable. She compares it to her sister's role. Maria treats everyone equally, invests herself fully in her duties, and that's why she's involved in pleading for Emadonia's release. Jean insists Maria gains nothing personally from this. Intrigued by the gemstone broadcast, Jean asks Soma if she can bring the same idea to her country. She wonders how he came up with such innovation. Soma simply explains. It's a common thing in his own world. At once, Jean bows and apologizes on behalf of the Empire for summoning him. Soma tells her he already knows the truth. The Empire never needed a hero. He was only summoned as a sacrifice to the demons, a political move to make Elfrieden look like they were contributing to the Mankind Declaration. But no one expected the summoning to succeed. And yet, Soma proved them all wrong. Now, Soma's only wish is to protect his new family. He asks Jean to recognize his jurisdiction over Emadonia. But Jean, too, has a family to protect. They agree negotiations are necessary, though it's clear these talks won't be simple. Back at the castle, the atmosphere lightens. Tomali eagerly shows off her new dress, and Soma gifts Aisha a lipstick, making her blush with happiness. She dreams of becoming more feminine for her beloved king. Liz, watching jealously, is relieved when Soma gives her a beautiful necklace that suits her perfectly. Surrounded by joy and laughter, Soma silently strengthens his resolve. He will protect this family at all costs.